I know exactly what you're thinking. Where is the defense coming from? You do have a point, but before I get into what I think of a potential trio involving three incredibly talented offensive players, can you drop a like right now and sub to the channel? I make this content like 5 to 6 times a week, and over the next month, I'm probably going to upload close to daily, so subbing to the channel really helps out, and it'll mean you're notified when I upload, and liking the video really helps out a lot, like significantly. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal. Now, after a 4-1 start to the season, the Wolves fans and social media team were up and about, and 18 games into the season, they had slowed down a bit, but they still sat at 10-8, which was enough for people to consider them a potential low seed playoff team in the West. But after they hit that 10th win, they had to then wait 12 games for their next win and had a record of 9-37 to end the season. So it's safe to say things didn't go very well for the T-Wolves to end the season. Catastrophic, you could almost say. A record of 9-37, that's trust the process 76ers type stuff. But let's not dwell on that for too long, because that's in the past, and following the acquisition of D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, the number 1 pick, and a now healthy Karl Anthony Towns, which they didn't have for a large portion of that stretch, this is a completely different team, which comes with different expectations, and looking back on a record that was not subpar, was terrible, is probably not that productive. When you're talking about Minnesota, there's no other place to start than with Cat. I know they now got the number 1 overall pick, but the big man is back, and we have seen guys like Jokic lead their team to the Western Conference Finals. Jimmy was the headline act in the finals for the Heat, but don't forget Bam Adebayo was the best player for the Heat throughout the rest of the playoffs, and particularly against the Celtics, where he dominated and proved he was the best player on the floor throughout a 6-game series, which featured Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, and a lot of talented wings and guards. So the big man is more than capable of dominating series and have proven it throughout this year's playoffs. You then have AD, who has been up there with LeBron all playoffs long, and overall the big man just seems more suited to winning than it has been previously. Now, when you look at Cat, he's an offensive monster. People say the best shooting big, and that's true, but this man is just one of the best shooters in the league, full stop. Forget big, just shooters. He is one of the best. 8 threes a game and hitting over 41% of them is just ridiculous for someone who can score inside as well, and is actually a pretty good playmaker, which is going to be crucial for them going forward. Although different players, there is a formula we have seen building an offense around an offensive mind center, and that's with the Nuggets. Supporting Towns with a defensive 4 would be ideal. Cat is going to have to improve defensively, but if you can have someone to shoulder the load alongside him, particularly when D'Angelo Russell will spend a lot of time on the court together and he's far from a great defender, and then aside from just a defensive-minded 4 like what the Nuggets have done with Paul Millsap, what Denver also did was put around wings that can guard multiple positions, provide energy, spacing, and an ability to cut to the basket, because although Cat doesn't have the vision of Jokic at the elbow, he's more than capable of making those passes to people slashing to the rim. And I think the Wolves already have a great player in that mold in Josh Kogi. Whether he comes off the bench or starts, he's going to play 25 to 35 minutes a game. He's someone that's already a pretty damn good defender, and although his offensive numbers look pretty shaky, particularly his shooting, after the Wolves acquired D'Lo and Beasley in the last 15 games of the season, Kogi saw a major spike in his shooting efficiency, and I would say a lot of that was due to the added spacing of the team. In the 14 games after those acquisitions, he had shooting splits of 50, 36, and 85, which if he can maintain or even get close to with his defense, he will earn himself a lot of minutes alongside Cat, and is going to help the team significantly. Even Juancho Hernan-Gomez put up great numbers after being traded to Minnesota, and I don't know if these numbers are sustainable based off his last few years, but if he can provide 15 to 20 minutes a game of solid defense and stretching the floor like he did in his first games for the Wolves, then he's just another good rotation player to have. These kind of wings, I don't think you can have enough of, particularly during the regular season, and we've seen it with Denver and those kind of teams. They might play Torrey Craig 25 minutes one night and then 5 the next. It's really just dependent on how they're performing and the matchup. And if the Timberwolves can have that luxury, which they haven't had in recent years, it's just going to help their overall system and just help them record wins night in and night out, which is what they have to start getting back to doing. You even have Jake Layman, who's, not a very fashionable player, but he's solid in that role. If he can improve his 3-point shooting a bit, and if they can add another guy or 2 in free agency, I don't mind what they have as wings around Towns, maybe the likes of Crowder, those kind of guys. If they can get them at a decent price and add them as shooters and defenders and versatile players that can slash to the rim. I know it's quite a generic criteria, but that's really what you need around someone that's just so good offensively and someone you want to surround with shooting, defense, and slashing. That seems to be the formula for offensive-minded bigs. Now, moving on from Cat, let's talk about the guards and what we could expect if they were to draft Melo and try to fit him alongside Beasley and D'Lo. A lot of people think the Wolves should go for Anthony Edwards because they already have someone like D'Lo to playmake, but I don't think that's enough playmaking. Most of the best teams have multiple playmakers playmakers and ball handlers, or an incredibly special one who can handle a serious amount of the playmaking duties. And although D'Lo is a good playmaker, a pretty solid one, he's not a great one, and they need multiple in my opinion. Whether this means they move D'Lo to the 2 and have Melo run point, or have them as combo guards, which I think they are both capable of being, or have Lamelo come off the bench and keep Beasley, you know what I'm saying, someone comes off the bench, someone stays on the floor, just to create a bit more playmaking with the second unit or with the starters. But talking about Beasley was insane after joining Minnesota. It was only a small sample size, but after getting more opportunity, he didn't just increase in numbers, he increased in efficiency and went from someone who looks like a solid bench piece to a starter level player, a potential starter or a potential 6-man type of guy, a Buddy Hield type player if he can maintain that consistency as someone who can let it rain from beyond the arc. But unfortunately, like Buddy Hield, he has his defensive deficiencies currently. However, Malik did mention he knows his defense is below par, and hopefully that self-awareness will lead him to improving that side of the ball, because he knows if he can become a solid defender with his offense that he was providing, he's going to get a big payday and he's going to get a starting place on most teams in the league. So it's really up to him to take that initiative, because he's got the tools to be a solid defender. He's athletic enough, he's strong enough, and he's good enough to be a solid defender. And solid defense is probably all you need from someone who provided that kind of offensive punch towards the end of the season. In terms of D'Angelo Russell, he's always been an interesting player to me. He's a pretty good offensive player, and he's going to give you 20 and 8 or 20 and 7, but he still struggles attacking the rim, isn't an elite shooter, and is not an elite playmaker and a subpar defender. I know when I put it like that, it seems quite critical and seems like he's terrible, but obviously he's not that. On the other hand, D'Lo has never played with a player like Cat on a personal or skill level, and that might be enough to elevate his playmaking game and go from a good playmaker to maybe a great one. There's potential for that, and maybe enough to incentivize him to improve his defense, which is what a lot of these Wolves guys need to do. Beasley, Cat, D'Lo, and even if they bring in Lamelo Ball, pretty much all of these guys do have question marks over their defense, but I think it's not necessarily through lack of ability to defend in the case of Cat, in the case of Beasley, in the case of Lamelo. It's just a will to defend and getting put in the right system, which if they do get put in, I think they can be solid. It's not like they're 5'9" unathletic people that can't defend multiple positions or can't defend their positions. They're all athletic, they're all pretty lengthy, and they're all good enough to defend. It's just they need to be switched on. But like I said, one of D'Lo's major downfalls is his ability to finish at the rim, and that also leads into his inability to draw fouls, because attempting around 4 to 5 free throws a game, it's just not going to be enough to have you amongst the elite scorers and the elite guards in the game that normally get to the line 7 to 10 times a game. And if he can push that up to those kind of numbers, he's going to start averaging 23 to 25 points a game, and maybe the added playmaking, and then all of a sudden, maybe he becomes one of the best guards in the league. He does have that potential still. When talking about the number 1 pick, I think we also have to consider the Wolves trading back and getting a wing. I think Okongwu is probably the best fit alongside Towns. He's exactly what I talked about in a versatile 4 that can defend multiple positions and it's just a defensive anchor, but also it seems like a reach to take him at number 1. So if they could trade back and potentially pick up another pick or maybe a solid rotation player, I'd be more than pleased for the Wolves to do that. You've got Isaac Akoro, who's more of a 3, but he kind of fits that same mold, can guard multiple positions, is developing on offense, but defensively he's a monster and is someone they kind of need. But also at the same time, the Wolves might just pick the best player available, and I think that's Lamelo Ball, who provides playmaking, which is something they need. People see the raw assists of D'Lo, but that's not enough for a team that doesn't have really any other major playmakers in their roster. Going into next year, I don't know if the Timberwolves are going to be a playoff team just yet. It's going to take a special effort from Cat on both ends of the floor, which he is more than capable of, but then we're also going to need to see development from Beasley and Russell, particularly defensively, and also consistency from Beasley after a hot streak to end the season, which it might only be that. We don't know if it's sustainable yet, and a few smart acquisitions are also needed, and the hopes that their number 1 pick, or if they choose to trade that pick, impacts the team from the get-go. There's just a lot of question mark. There's a lot of pieces that need to fall into place, but if they can find a way to keep Cat, hit on the first pick, get the best out of D'Lo and Beasley, and just build the pieces around them over the next 1 or 2 years, they could be back in the playoff picture, and I'd expect them to be back in the playoff picture if they do all of those things. Those things aren't as far-fetched as you'd think. I know it seems like a lot of things to fall into place, but they're all pretty reasonable expectations. It's just a few things go wrong, a few things don't go right, and they're going to be back towards the bottom of the Western Conference, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They've got 1 or 2 years to rectify this and hopefully build around Karl Anthony Towns before he really wants to leave their organization, which I think they can do. I have more faith in Minnesota than I did heading into last year, and that's really what matters. It wouldn't completely shock me if they were a playoff team. It wouldn't shock me if they're towards the bottom of the table. There just has to be a few things that go right, which can happen, but it's still unknown at this point in time. I'll probably make a more in-depth video on what they can do as a team if they make the acquisitions that I want them to make, and then we can talk about them as a team and their expectations. But until then, let me know what you think of the T-Wolves. Should they take Melo? Should they trade down? Should they take a flyer on Akoro or a Kongwu at 1? I know that'd be crazy, but who knows what they do. Basically, they just have to do everything to keep Cat, and if that's what they need to do, then that's what they're going to do. If you did make it to the end of the video and you haven't subbed or liked, it'd be much appreciated if you did so. These videos do take quite a lot of time to make, and it doesn't take much time to like the video, so thanks. Anyways, I'll catch you next time. Bye.